Let's tell me when I need to start smiling then.
Hello, everyone,
Hi.
and welcome to this webinar. We are recording now. So this is Bridging the Gaps with the Milky Way Enterprise Map. I'm Milan Günther. I'm president of the Intersection Group, and I'm extremely happy to have with me today Anika. Hi, Anika. Say a few words about yourself.
Hi, I'm really glad to be here too, Milan. My name is Annika, and like you said, I am a former consultant. Now I am a business architect, business designer, you could say, at Scania, a Swedish truck company. And I have been working with this method called the Milky Way for a number of years. And we have been collaborating for also a number of years around this and around various topics. So I'm really, really glad to be able to share this again and see if we can inspire you into maybe trying something new and finding maybe some answers to some of the challenges that at least I had before I started using this way of thinking.
Thank you. Yes, exactly. So just to give you a little bit of background, so we are the Intersection Group. We like to think that we help people create better enterprises. There's a little asterisk there to say what we mean by better, because there's not always completely straightforward to find an answer to that. So it is those that pursue a clear purpose, that enterprises that are useful for people and their lives, and enterprises that perform and deliver on their promises. And what we are going to show you today is a map. It's called the Milky Way because it looks a little bit like the Milky Way. You see actually behind our logo there is a picture of the actual Milky Way. It doesn't really look like that, but it looks like like a map of it, and we will see that in a bit. But to get started, we want you to take you into a meeting room. And I know that's not necessarily something that people aspire to these days, but bear with us and let's just assume you're sitting at this table and someone is going blah, blah, blah.
Yes. And the blah, blah, blah. And with a smile ending the presentation saying, isn't this great? And then the next slide will show what all the people have in their heads, because even though there is a topic that maybe all the people in the room are aware of, there is a very high chance that there will be different perspectives that pop up in the different people's heads. Some might think of the processes or the overall structure of the organization. Another one might think about how does this really relate to the strategy that we were discussing the other meeting or something. And the third one can have some insight in the delivery portfolio and saying that this is a great idea, but given what we already have in our pipeline, this is not going to happen. And the last one might have something around, how does this relate to our formal structure, our formal organization? Who is responsible for whatever we were discussing? And this is really tricky because if you then start the conversation in the meeting with these different starting points, you will have a pretty hard time finding common ground. That is at least my experience. And do you recognize yourself in this situation? Somebody is telling something and then various relevant points, but not connected points pop up. So this is a challenge. And what if the next topic, no, you're too fast, will be one of the guys is a new colleague, and he is presenting himself. I'm from Fiumicino. I'm from Fiumicino, near Rome in Italy. The interesting thing is if we are like most people, we would not pop up with different things in our heads when we're related to geography. We would more likely have different levels of zooming in to this particular part or town in Italy. If you haven't never been to Europe, it might be a vague thing. Italy, that is my sort of key word. If you're somewhat familiar with Europe, you would know where Italy is and probably the shape of it. And if you have been to Rome, maybe you know Rome, and this sounded like a small town outside. And maybe you had been into this specific town and you would have a very specific picture of walking by the canals in this village. So we are really good at navigating a map based on geography. And we have spent a lot of time educating ourselves, working with this geography dimension over time, both in our lives and as a civilization. We have been working with maps in various forms and shapes based upon a geography, sense of geography. So we're good at this. And the point is here, is there a way for us to use our sense of geography, our sense of map drawing and usage of maps when we think of creating maps of enterprises? So is there a way of doing that? And this was sort of a thing that puzzled me because I was struggling really in architecture and really, I mean, how can this be so hard for people to understand? And I got to the point that I need to find another way of doing it. And then if I want to have a map, I need to find some kind of geography. And I decided to look for what would be the stable variable or stable dimension in an enterprise that I can find and most people can relate to. And what I found was that if we are navigating or positioning or using our overall value flow in as a basis for this map, a lot of people from different parts of the organization will have fairly easy time navigating. So we looked for the overall value flow. In this little example, there's this arc representing the value flow. And if you would step it further, you would see that this company does something around ideas, innovation, and then this company produces things. And then we meet customers. We have some kind of sales marketing thingy. And once we have struck a deal, we are delivering things. And then we are collecting money. We're probably both sort of paying suppliers, but hopefully getting more from our customers. And then in the very end of this, we are thinking, how can we make this better? How can we, based upon all the feedback that we're getting, improve so we can make this sort of an ongoing improvement and value creation circle, if you like. So this is basically identifying the overall business logic and both business logic, but most when we think of maps, the business geography of our Milky Way map.
Yeah.
Exactly. So with that introduction, you start, right?
Yes, exactly.
So we have a little thing for you. We'd like you to try and make a first sketch of your enterprise and take a picture and send it to this napkin at intersection point group. And then we will pick them up in the end of the session. Don't be shy. This has to do with, do them fast, see if it works, and start playing around.
Yeah, and you can use an actual napkin. I will show one in a minute, actually. Or you can also use your screen. You can draw little icons, like in this example, or you can also just write what your enterprise is doing at each of these stages of the value flow. And just send it to the email address there, and we will look at that a little bit later. Yeah, so that's basically the idea of the Milky Way, to use this central hook, you could say, or a dynamic to introduce a universal navigation pattern. And the variant of the map that we are showing you today is actually combining this with another idea, and that you might have seen before, if you're familiar with this guy, with Simon Sinek, and the idea of I think it's called the golden circle, where we ask ourselves, if we map enterprises, what is it that we are actually mapping? And he says in his book, Start With Why, he says that many enterprises, and there's like a famous talk about this, where he talks about Apple, many enterprises, or most of them, know what they are doing. And some of them actually know how they are doing it, like what are the secret recipes, the processes, the patents, and so on, the skills that they need. But then very few are extremely clear about why they are doing it. For us, this makes a lot of sense. So the way we structure our napkin, this is a napkin that is actually on my kitchen table, is we use the same structure and we combine it with this value flow that Anika just talked about. So we are looking at what what does the enterprise actually do for people? How does it do it? And why is it doing it? And then we have this idea that you know, if you're a customer, you kind of get in touch with the enterprise, and then you get out of touch again, which is the journey that you see on the top. And then we have the value flow of the enterprise, like what is the enterprise doing again and again and again. And if you're familiar with the content from the intersection group, this is what we're talking about here, is what we call the enterprise design facets. So universal traits that we can use to describe any enterprise, and map basically the material that the enterprise consists of, which is the identity, the architecture, and the experience. So it's this question like, why do we exist? Why do we do what we are doing? What is really important? What matters to us? What do we believe in? What's our purpose? Which is the identity. And then we have the architecture, which is how are we doing all that? What are we capable of? What are our capabilities? What are the processes that we are putting into place? What are the systems and assets and resources that we need? And then finally, what does this all result in for people? Like, what is the role that we play in their lives? How do we add value to their lives? And then we have the intersections in between, which is, well, how do we organize ourselves to implement our identity into an architecture, which is the organization? How do we work together as a team? Who's doing what? Who's responsible for what? And then using that operational architecture, how do we actually come up with products and services and offerings that then people can actually buy and use in their lives? And that, again, then will reflect on our brand. How are we being perceived in people's experiences and by people? And in the middle, you have the little elephant, which basically says, you know, that's actually the enterprise, you know, where all of these things intersect. And if they are really coherent, then we have a good model of the enterprise, a good map, a good understanding, and then the different characteristics of the enterprise actually work in the same direction. While if they are all very, very different, like if the story we tell as part of our identity about our purpose is completely different from the way we actually architect the enterprise, which again is very different from the way we actually are experienced by people, then we run into problems. And then and you see that this is very much related to problems like the one in the meeting room, where people with different perspectives, different lenses, just don't understand each other. So that's the enterprise on a napkin, and that's the idea of the Milky Way. So we have in the middle, why do we exist? What for? What's this all about? We have at the very outside, we have what do we do for people? And then in between, we need to somehow answer the question, how are we doing that? And so there are many maps and models around. And what we would like to do now, ask you to do now, is take a vote on what are the kinds of maps and models that you are making in your job. And I will just put the link into the chat. So it's i-g.at/vote. You can also scan this QR code. And there you have a selection of maps and models on Menti. And just select which ones you are making as part of your job. And if the one that is really your killer map, the one that you really use a lot and believe is accurately representing an enterprise, and it's missing from our list because we only had so many options, just put it in the chat. Let's see. Here we go. We have already some votes, 7 votes. So 5 people make capability maps. 7 people make capability maps, some process maps. We have 2 Wardley mappers, some customer journeys, 5 application architecture fans, service blueprints, 3 people use that. Org chart, 2 people. I think it has fallen a little bit out of fashion. An entity relationship model.
Well, you can never have too many, can you?
Yes. Value stream maps seem to be missing in our list.
Good.
Fair enough. Personas. okay, 2 people want value stream maps. Maybe we actually add that, but we need then to kick out one other one next time.
Maybe it's a time to get rid of the org chart.
Yeah, I don't know, like
Or the entity relationship, God, that was worse.
yeah. Right. So what you can see here actually is that there are many. Oh yeah, and Gayatri is actually saying personas might not actually be a map. Fair enough. Yeah, we will actually get to what is a map in a bit, but what you see there is that there's not really consensus in this room which maps are the best for dealing with the challenges we are facing when designing enterprises. So many people, and I kind of think that all of us here are actually concerned with the idea to make enterprises, organizations, businesses better, maybe in the sense like we said before. But then how do we actually map them? And is there a way to integrate all of this in one model? So thank you for the vote. Let's continue. All right. So we will get into what the Milky Way actually looks like so that you see what we are talking about. And the example that we are using is a railway company. So, but as you see here, this is just one template that you can use to get started with the Milky Way. It's kind of a simplified one where you actually have those zones that we talked about. So we have the identity, we have the architecture. So why are we here? How is it working? And then what are we doing for people? And at the intersections, you have lines for where you could map the organization, the products and services delivered to people, and the brand. And then you have here a very generic value flow, which is we're building something, we're developing something and marketing it. We are operating in some way to deliver that, and then we are learning and we are optimizing. And as I said, we are using a railway company as an example. And the first example for something we might want to map is actually coming from Japan, which is this model, which we found on in a report of JR East. It's one of the 2 national railway companies of Japan, and this is basically their statement what they want to do, right? So, and you see it's maybe vision and mission statement. Sometimes they are quite empty. Sometimes there's a lot of stuff in there. This is deliberately an example of a company that has a lot of stuff in there. So they want to do things like making cities more comfortable, helping developing businesses for the world, making regional areas more affluent, but then also pursue ultimate safety levels, service quality, the happiness of the employees and their families. You have some jargon in there that we don't know because we don't know their world. Making Suica a shared infrastructure, we don't know what that is. But that's always the case, you have always a little bit of jargon. But what we can do basically in there is we can look at, okay, what are some of the things that we can map on our circle, and then have a conversation and say, is this actually what your enterprise is about? Is it bring people together, seamless mobility, new data-driven services, building a shared infrastructure, ultimate safety levels, and so on and so on. And when we populate the Milky Way, the initial version, this is often how we go about it, right? So we look at what are those purpose statements, for example, and how do they fit to the scenario? So, for example, if we say build a shared infrastructure, where does it fit? Well, it fits quite well into the building of, we want to build something for our railway service. Or if we say we want to bring people together, it has to do with marketing routes and the network and connections and so on. Safety and comfort and convenience. These goals are really realized when we're operating, when you actually ride the train. And then we have also things that don't fit. And you see that in the bottom of the map, there's this little gap where we say, okay, there are some things that are deliberately not mapped to the value flow. It's like when the enterprise takes a pause, thinks about what happens and reflects about it. I know, Anika, am I accurately describing this?
Yes, you are. Go ahead, definitely. And it just for sort of the reference. I mean, like I said, we worked together over the years, and I think this definitely, this green facets is something that we have added, or you've added into this way of thinking, because it really drives the behavior in each of these sectors. So I think that is really, really a good way of not just showing what's there, but rather what makes what's there act in what ways.
Yes, yes.
To say.
Yeah, exactly. So someone just said we need to zoom in a bit because I think the resolution of this tool is not the best. So I'll just, for 1 second, zoom
But like you
here.
said, you will get the slides with
Yeah,
a bit more of the details, but I can
but
definitely
just
see your point.
yeah, just to show you. So this is how we mapped some of the goals we found. And bear in mind, this is not a real company. This is we call it Intersection Railways, and we use it for our trainings. And it's inspired by a whole bunch of railway companies, including the Japanese ones, when it comes to what we actually map here.
Yeah.
Moving on, populating more of the map. What about the outside? What about people's experiences, the passenger experience, and so on? And I'm aware that this is another one that is really hard to read, but if you want to look at a detailed version, this is a super classic. It's from Adaptive Path. And if you just Google experience map, you will find this one, because it's in many books. It's in Jim Kalber's book on mapping experiences. It's like one of the first pioneering example of experience maps from 2011. And you see here that people go through this cycle or this process of this journey of researching and planning, shopping, booking a ticket, traveling. And there's some stuff in here that actually, because it's 11 years old, might be different today. Like, for example, people are getting paper tickets in their mail here, right? But in the end, the tasks are actually quite stable, is what we found. And if you are familiar with jobs to be done, for example, it's the same principles. Like, we still want to get from A to B, and we still rely on these companies to help us with that. Just the way we are doing that is different. And if we look here for some materials that we can use to populate our map. So yeah, we have some journey stages here, and we have some tasks, like I talk to friends. Where do we want to go? Review the fares, research some hotels around it. I have to pay. Maybe there's a trouble with my payment. I need to troubleshoot. I need to somehow get my tickets. I get to the station. I get on the train. I show my tickets. And many times in these journey maps or experience maps, this is already mixed with what the enterprise actually wants to do to help people. So we have some product candidates at the bottom here, like a planning tool, the ticket offerings, the different subscriptions or specials, support services, offerings for certain destinations. And so we can map that, right? So here we have, for example, a passenger. And so again, it's a little bit tough to read for you, I guess, but again, we will send you the slides later. But basically this, so if we add the tasks here, so we have this passenger dreaming of far away, getting some trip ideas, planning with friends, reviewing options, checking the details, booking a ticket, packing, arranging local transport, getting to the station, having a snack, getting on the train, riding, arriving, and so on and so on. And so we see now, this is kind of what our passenger wants. The Milky Way actually supports also other actors. Like, we can look at, for example, what do our shareholders want? They want to invest in our company? Why would they do that? How would that work? How can we support that? We have a government official here that needs to connect their region, maybe at the outskirts of our country. We have a job candidate here. We have a contractor. So the enterprise is not just passengers or customers. It's other actors as well. And they interact with us as we go through the cycle of the Milky Way. And this is where it gets in the ecosystem topic. But fundamentally, the Milky Way actually started its life as an architecture map. And when we say architecture, here's one picture that I found on a British website on railway engineering. And here you see basically the vision for trains in the future. and it's very technical, right? It's about capacity, capability, technology, coordination, operations, connectivity, maintenance, planning, R&D delivery, personalized customer experience. If you're working in any kind of digital projects, digital transformation, these kind of things, you find these kind of topics. Running trains closer together, low cost, optimum energy use. So you have all of these things, and what we can infer from that is basically what needs to be done, right? So we can find in here some capabilities that the enterprise needs to run. So we have to run maintenance, we have to innovate, we have to deal with the customer relationship, we have to operate the stations, we have to operate the trains, we have to design our products, which includes the trains, but also, of course, the destinations, the routes, and the whole service. We need to manage the energy, we need to optimize cost, and so on. And again, and if you are working in enterprises, you might actually find that there's an overwhelming amount of detail about these things.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, for example, this one is just a process model in BPMN for claiming when something went wrong. And and if you have ever experienced enterprise awkwardness, which is when an enterprise behaves really weirdly, like for example, they lose your contact details all the time, or they send you lots of automated messages saying, please do not reply to this message. This is normally the root cause of that. Like it's trying to automate the enterprise like a machine, and this is not necessarily always in sync with the ideas of the customer's experience or what the organization actually wants or the purpose that the enterprise pursues. So this is why, when we look at these capabilities, and this is a more traditional capability map, with everything that our railway enterprise needs to be able to do, using the Milky Way, we can contextualize this map and again map those capabilities onto our value flow. So when do we do certain things? We will look at more examples of this later. But basically, you really look at, okay, which are the capabilities that best fit into the pause, which are the ones that best fit to certain stages of the value flow. And then also which of them are close to the customer. Like here we have sell passenger tickets or passenger information, which of course corresponds to certain customer tasks. Which of them are really related to something that we want to pursue as an enterprise? Which one are related to other actors and their tasks? And this is how you can kind of populate your geography with data points and with elements that make the enterprise.
We have a question. Antonio is wondering whether this is the digital twin of the actual experience, and to some extent, you could say it's how this network of different things happening is functioning, and a way of sense making. How can we understand how the outside activities from customers, partners, or anybody is driving activities on the inside, and also how the values that we have is influencing how we act. I mean, we cannot decide over what customers are doing, but we can decide and try to drive a certain behavior in our own organization that hopefully will make others perceive us as friendly or professional or whatever, value or purpose that we would like to pursue. So it's a way of sense making it. I'm just sort of the word digital. I'm not really sure if it has to be digital. I mean, I've been working a lot with these types of maps on walls. The idea is to sense make it and to make people understand their position or their way of working and their task, if you like, and see that in the larger context, both from a flow point of view of what's happening before me and what's happening after me, and also what is it that is driving my behavior, both from a purpose level, but also what type of customer behavior are we trying to support or enhance, or so that is sort of given my daily work some direction or meaning, if you like. So I hope that was some kind of answer, Antonio.
Yeah, I have to admit I don't really understand the question, but I think if we look a little bit into the examples, that will
Yep.
become clearer. Just before we do that, so you see that the Milky Way is kind of easy as a base model. So basically, you give people this value flow. You give people, okay, why are we here? What are our purposes? Okay, what do our customers actually want from us? Where do we fit in? Like, what are the tasks that they need solving? And then what do we need to do? And this is all, right? So with that, we can have a workshop and we can populate our Milky Way. Now, behind that is hiding a lot of stuff.
Good stuff.
Yeah. So a lot of thinking. So so Anika has been doing this since when, actually, Anika? Since
Well, the first one was actually at TUI, and there is somebody in the audience that was at TUI at the time. This is back in 2013,
right.
and this was driven by frustration over a number of years. Why can't I get this through? Why do not people see the connections? And I don't know. Frustration is a strong driver when it comes to innovating, at least in my life. So that is how it started. So it's been around for a while, but it's sort of been exploring and improving. Yeah.
And so this slide is actually one that we stole from Simon Wardley and his introduction to Wardley maps, where he explains what a map is and what isn't, and how to use a map. And according to his definitions, lots of the maps that we are making, like capability maps, journey maps, and so on, personas also, are not actually maps, because there are some criteria for a map, which is it's visual. It's not just a list. It's contextual. Things that are together actually share a context. The position is important. There's an anchor, like pointing north, for example. There's movement. I can say this moves from there to there. And there are different components like land and water, or cities, or streets, and so on. And he uses this map of the Battle of Troja, I think, or Sparta. I'm not sure actually which one, but you can watch it. It's on YouTube. And he kind of disses the SWOT model, as you can see here, like, opportunities. We get rid of the Persians, or we get rid of the Spartans. We become and he asked, like, okay, what would you use actually for strategy if you were the commander of this army? Would you use the map, or would you use this other model? And all these components of our map really help us to say, okay, I'm here, you're there. This is our connection. This is the path. This is what needs to move. This is, we don't know what will happen here in this area, or how do we connect those two areas? And all of these things rely on this visual representation, and a shared sense of geography. So without diving too much into this, this is explaining how the Milky Way provides this geography. So we basically have at the bottom our reflection space, and we have at the top our doing space. So it goes basically, the higher something is on the map, the more it's closer to operations, and the lower, the closer it is to reflection and strategy. The more on the left it is, because this is how our cycle usually starts, is we are making something and marketing. So the more on the left it is, it's more close to making and sourcing, and the more on the right it is, we are delivering things. And this also then leads to where are the people that are in touch with the enterprise located on the map. So usually our suppliers help us make and come up with something. So their journey usually starts down here. The prospects are the ones that we actually want to sell to. The customers then get something delivered, and the investors help us actually implement our strategy and give us money actually to do so. And then of course you have another dimension, which is this inside and outside. So the closer it is to the center, the more it is about what we want to do. The more it is to the outside, the more it is about what our other ecosystem actors want to do. And then this is combined actually with the cycle and with the idea of the facets, so the identity, architecture, experience, the elements, and the intersections, the brand, the product, and the organization. And so you see that the map is actually quite complex, but it's hiding this complexity under basically a board of like space where you can position your elements and then play around with them. So in order to use the Milky Way, you don't actually need to understand all of this, which is, I think, one of the perks of a geographical map, right?
Exactly. And the point here is that working with architecture in another way is that I realized that I needed so much data and information about each piece. So it's just impossible to find all the pieces in this huge map, sort of pile of stuff. So that was also one of the things that I tried to find by using this map, because there is no details. I mean, if you look at the proper map, you just you know the signs, you know the details, and you do not need to be told all the extra things that you could tell. You just navigate, and then if you need to, you can look into specific maps. So this simplifying we're actually using the context in the map to be able to not show all the explicit information that you could show. So it's a bit of, like you said, it's hiding, but it's highlighting it by the geography idea. Maybe I just messed this one up. That has been a strong thing in here.
Yeah, and so the elements that we map on here, also we normally don't map all of them. As you saw in the examples before, we only mapped actually those three here: tasks, capabilities, and purposes. We can also, there are maps where you only have capabilities, or even only tasks or only purposes, right? So you can actually configure your map to your needs. You can also have different visualizations, and we will see that in a bit. But just for your reference, I included here how the facet model is translated to elements that we use on the map. So this is for the architects mostly, I think. So what are those elements that are hiding behind those facets, and how do we map them? And you will find here also how they are defined. So how do we define each of these things that we might want to map? But moving on, because of time, we will actually look at some examples. So here's an example of a Milky Way.
Exactly. So this is how we have sort of zoomed into one layer, one sort of section of the map, and in this case, the experience. And then we're trying to sort of highlight what is the customer experience when you're interacting with this railway company. And you can see the passenger, and then you can see the arrows, and how we hope or see, or depending on where we are in the mapping, how the passenger is moving through the different tasks, from deciding on booking a ticket or planning a trip, and then into the actual booking, and then preparing, and then eventually getting on to the station, and eventually on the train, and so on. And we're trying to sort of highlight how would we like to sort of path away for the passengers, so that this experience is as smooth and easy and happy, whatever purpose we're striving at when we're designing this. And you can see that there are some green and yellow frames around the different tasks, and that could be a way of highlighting these are things that are working really well, or these are things that we need to improve, or just maybe say these are things that we're focusing on to get an idea of where we are in this map when we may be discussing a topic or something in a meeting.
Yeah, actually, in this example, the color code, and this is something that maybe we should add to the slide, is it means, so the yellows are the top tasks. So like in our virtual world that doesn't exist, we did a top task identification to find which tasks or jobs to be done are really important to our customers. And planning with friends, booking a ticket, getting on the train, won. And then the green ones also turned out to be really important. And then we can add some metrics, for example, 65% conversion at booking a ticket. We can illustrate what context our customers go through. And you see, like in a journey map, if you're familiar with or experience map, you can actually use all sorts of arrows to express, like in the adaptive path example, actually, how does this experience scenario actually play out, and also depict a little bit of the chaos, right? Because experiences are actually never linear and simple. They are always complex. And what you see also here, we only included level 2 capabilities of the capability map, so that you see all capabilities. We could also hide the ones that are not relevant, but in this case, we wanted say, okay, there are passenger services, but there are also freight services for B2B customers. They are not actually triggered in this because this is a consumer brand. X Europe is our consumer offering, but we map them anyway because this is everything our company can do. And these are the decisions that you need to similar to making another, like a geographical, like a map of the land or of a city. What do you show and what do you hide? Are you interested in the roads? Are you interested in parks? Are you interested in water? Are you interested in elevation? And are you actually equally interested in every area, or do you focus on some?
Yeah. There's a question from Antonio again. Is there a priority consideration for how you would use those purpose principles? How does the map manage these trade-offs? And I think this is where the usage of the map really comes into play. And we are in practice using different types of maps with different zoom-ins, depending on what type of question what type of topic you're discussing or trying to explore. But the main point here is that we use the same overall geography. So we can zoom in, but we would still have the same dimensions and we would know where we are, but we might only look like, in this case, on the tasks. But I think there is another example when you zoom into the capabilities, right?
Yeah, actually, here's an example where we have, it's basically the same example that we had before, right? So we have more space for the architecture and less space for the purpose and for the identity and the experience.
Yep.
So here we actually have all the capabilities that are on the capability map. It depends really on what is the question that you want the map to not answer, but facilitate a conversation about.
Yes.
Right? That's kind of the question when deciding what to show. And just an example for more detailed architecture views. So here we have the same capabilities and in context of our purposes and the customer experience, but we added the IT systems that the capabilities rely on as an asset in order to run.
Yeah. And this is one of the sort of valuable architecture views that you fairly fast can come up with doing this. And you can also add things like IT service if you want to go deeper. I think we can take the next one, can't we?
Yeah, just to show
exactly. So here we have sort of made an effort into trying to sort of display, if we were to show how the different capabilities are communicating with each other. In this case, we're putting it system to system, but you could also think of it as from capability to capability, because if there is an integration, there is some kind of conversation going on. You're just hopefully not just shoving sort of data to somebody else. There is a reason for it. Somebody needs something from you and you're delivering some kind of value. And this is a way of showing that.
And that's a very interesting point, right? Because here we talk about capabilities and IT systems, but you could just said somebody. So how do we map the somebody?
Exactly.
Somebodies are usually forced into some kind of org chart, like the one at the bottom left. And we can overlay these someone's actually on the map and say, okay, which capability corresponds to which team, and thereby also looking at how do we actually work together.
Yep.
And important here to notice is that, for example, some teams might actually appear several times on the map, right? So a classic example I have is like the customer experience team might be important. What is it like at 7 o'clock of the map, where you actually decide what products to make and get customer insights, and inform your product and service design. But then they might also be really important on the other side at about 5 o'clock, where you actually look at the analytics and what happened and what actually your customers are saying, like voice of the customer programs and so on. So different capabilities mapped to different organization teams. And the important thing here is not to have everything only once on the map, but to have really this shared sense of what's going on in our enterprise and where do I have to do something and who do I have to deal with, who do I depend on and who depends on me.
Yep.
Um,
And the whole accountability, budgeting, there's a lot that comes with, oh, exactly, this one. If we want to take a look at what type of investments are we doing, or how much are things cost? We have done several, I don't know, improvement programs and so on, and the numbers are not going down. Why not? Or if we're saying that we're going to invest in the customer relationships, but we're always investing in another area. So this is a way of also sense making these budget and investing budgets or investment portfolios in a more tangible way. And it's fairly straightforward, let's say, when you have the base map.
Yeah, we can also go really deep into one particular problem. So here we actually zoomed in into one sector of the map, which is has to do with our infrastructure track maintenance process. And you see here our process has these 6 process steps, and those process steps rely on certain IT applications. Some of them we need to replace soon, like here's this dark red orange one that actually we need to phase out and replace. And so we can actually have the same process. And if you are in IT architecture or business analysis or anything like this, you might know this kind of model. And we can trace the same model, exactly the same, on the geography. But then we see it in context, basically, of the why and what we're doing for people. And in this case, for example, this is actually before we interact with any customer. But if your track maintenance doesn't work, the train will not run.
No. And then it doesn't matter. But this is a way of navigating the different dimensions. And the last one is, I think there was a question about if we're using the user experience with capabilities via the value flow. I think this is a slide for you. So
Yes,
basically,
exactly.
yeah, the
So,
basic,
so
go ahead.
yeah, never mind the jargon. Actually, we can call it value flow. We can call it value stream process. We are not like in if you are interested in this kind of stuff. In next week, Wolfgang and I we're doing a webinar on Edgy, where we actually try to get rid of most of these terms and replace them with what we call teenager language. But here you have what's happening between capabilities and applications in order to inform a very specific customer journey, which is actually getting a personalized meal on the train. So what are the products involved? What are the tasks of our customer involved? What are the IT, what are the capabilities that these products depend on to be delivered? And then what is the information flowing between the systems that the capabilities rely on? And so this is a very, very realistic example. We are using this in many projects to actually facilitate conversations between product and digital people, customer experience, user experience people, service design, and then IT architects, application architects, enterprise architects, business analysts, and also, for example, a branding person or an organization designer. Looking at, okay, what, like, for example, in order to do what we are displaying here, do we maybe actually need to change the training program of people preparing the train? And this is something that this map doesn't depict, but if they can read the map, they can actually add their perspective.
Yep.
All right. One thing, talking about design and prototyping and things like that, what we also do often is geolocating certain things. So here we have like some dashboard mock-up, some illustration of a process, some illustration of an app or some data model. And we can actually position them on the map and say, this is where this is relevant. Like, this is a customer-facing application. This is a internal, we want to learn about what we do. This is maybe a strategy workflow or validation process. This is some model that we need to use for our maintenance and building activities. Again, same geography connected to other models.
Yep. And this is the way of really a simplified version of working with roadmaps and saying that, okay, based upon the strategy that we're having, what are the focus areas that we are aiming for over the next coming years? So by highlighting areas that are functioning well today and highlighting areas that are not, with green, yellow, and red, you can see that the shift from today to 2023 is that we're going to improve the red areas on the top of the map. Probably has to do with the customer experience in some way. The red area down at 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock is not going to be moved. It's not going to be changed till 2025 either. So if you're in that area, do not expect anything to happen. So it's a way of using this to signaling where are we investing and where are we expecting change. So this is a simplified example, but is really a fairly easy way to communicate the expected changes and the expected investments and efforts that we're going to put in the different areas of the company. So this and this type of information is usually kind of hard to come through to sort of relay in a good, fast way. I don't know if you can add something, or it's a huge topic, but it's a way of visualizing what we're aiming for and manage expectations of some people.
Yeah, well, one thing is that usually the Milky Way looks quite busy if you use it extensively. And people forget sometimes that this is actually a super relevant view where you actually zoom out so much that you hide all the details. And you really just use the geography itself, pretty much like, very, like if you zoom to the entire world map and you're like, okay, here's a crisis. We don't need to know exactly in which city or on which street. So we hide that. We just have this sense of position.
Yeah. And so basically, what you can do when you have a map like that, you can depict. So we have two different ideas of change. One that has to do with the customer experience and one that has to do with the recruitment process at 8 o'clock. Which one should we go for? Based upon the slide before, we should go on improving the customer experience, because we said that we're not going to move anything in the red area around 8 o'clock. So that's like, don't even invest in trying to do that change because it's not important. The customer experience is more important. So there's a way of trying to be really clear on priorities.
All right, I'm just doing a little time check. We're a little bit over time, and I just wanted, before people have to start leaving, ask two questions. Should we look at the maps now, if anyone sent any? And then also, Anika, do you have time to?
I have time to hang on a bit.
Excellent.
No problems.
And if you have to leave, we will actually send you the recording later. But actually, we don't have any napkins.
Oh.
So that settles that. I can just show you a napkin from the past to illustrate what people did in previous editions of this webinar. So yeah, here's one. Actually, without the voiceover now, it's pretty hard to read. But yeah, there's some. I think it's a software company. You can see that, and they start from like what people say, and then having ideas, and then in the end they make money. And I think here this one was also.
Did you have an email for? I can get that from the other one. Hang on.
Yeah, and so if you don't like to draw, we can also you can write, right? So here we have, for example, product design, manufacturing, marketing, sales, product management, finance, supply chain, after sales, and then on the bottom, this is something that sometimes happens, right? Is this chunk of IT, HR, risk management, strategy, legal, and sourcing.
Yeah. It is hard to write and to start drawing. Once you start it, it's really fun. Here is the email address again.
All right. Yeah, again, if you have to leave now, no problem. If you don't, please hang on, because now we will actually look at some real Milky Ways from Annika's company.
Exactly. So, and like you said, I work at the Scania right now, and we are using the Milky Way in our work, and I'm working in transformation and changing. Like everybody else, is we need to be able to move faster. We need to be able to be more sustainable. We're shifting to electricity, and there are lots of things going on. And these two slides are examples of our overall, the sort of high level value flow of our enterprise. So it actually starts at like 7 o'clock, where they're doing the right changes, we're identifying opportunities that we want to explore, and then we are designing them so that we can offer new types of products or services, and then we are releasing these changes, and eventually we are offering them to the customers. We're delivering them. This is our whole production setup, logistics, purchasing, everything. And then we have the actual deliver value, where the customers are using our vehicles and all the services that come with them. And to the left, you have another version of it, which is actually a newer one. And this is where we are trying to explore how we can visualize the need for faster feedback loops in the solution development areas. So we're actually sort of playing around with this continuous delivery into CDI CD loop that is a lot of you guys who are working with SAFE might recognize. So this is our sort of high level map. And if you take the next one, I can just zoom in to show you how we're using this when we look into the more details. So you see the square, the small map to the left, and then there is this area that I have zoomed into. So you can see, instead of using just boxes for the capabilities, I work with this fantastic guy who is able to do these icons. So instead of just having names and they all look all the same, every capability is a small little, as a piece of art, I'd say. And you can really get the feeling of what's going on in all these different things, in these different areas. And you also see that in our Milky Way, the arrows between the flow, the value flow that we call it, is as important as the capabilities. So it's not only about the pieces of the map, it's about how they are interacting and how we hope that they can interact in good ways. And if you take the next one, I think, this is an example of how we're zooming in from the overall to a bit of sort of the larger picture, and then describing one capability that has, in this case, has to do with verified product and process description. And here is something about how this is evolving. And like I said, we're in this transition, working more towards agile, towards closer customer experiences and customer cooperation. So if you take the next one here, I think you'll see that we have actually changed the icon for this verified product and process description, and we have added a part of the icon. I don't know if you can see it, but it is a little customer with a little heart, or actually a little diamond, which is representing the value that that customer is asking for. And we want to indicate that already early in our development processes, we are thinking of the customer, or we should think of the customer more. So by sort of designing these icons, we are trying to get the message in the overall map, instead of having a lot of extra detailed description material. I think you can take the next one. And we also, in this work with our Milky Way, trying to get a more outside and in perspective. And I'm currently working in a part of the organization that is transforming into what we call enablement. It's more of maybe you would say before that we're working with the support systems, with the PLM systems, supporting everybody with the latest production and product information, both the engineers and designers, but also the sales side. And we are having sort of we're running the risk of being a bit too internal. So we are sense making the customer experience and the customer journeys and the customers that are using our direct customers, you could say, as the customer journey for the design engineer and the customer journey for production engineer. And we're sort of sense making them and making sort of starting conversations about how do we make sure that we build capabilities with systems and think of user situations where we have the design engineer or production engineer or any other user in mind. So this is a way of expanding and getting the outside and in perspective. Can you take the next one, I think? And I've also sort of want to add, sort of end this session with how we're using this map with saying that a lot of capability maps are really about the capabilities. There are a lot of building blocks, and everybody says it's so great with the building blocks, but that's not enough. At least that's not enough in my experience. We also need to know how we want these building blocks to work. And the icon displayed here is the continuous exploration, continuous integration, and continuous deployment process that we want to have ongoing, and want this to be faster with faster feedback loops. So if you take the next one, you can see how we have sort of how we displayed this on the Milky Way. So if you take next again, we had a situation in the beginning with we work a lot in deciding what to do, and then we work a lot with our design, and then we work with a lot with introduction. But that's like waterfall. Even though our capabilities are great and our map is fantastic, we're still not working the way we'd like us to work. So if you take the next one, we're now trying to sort of find ways of making this loop, the end-to-end flow, faster. So we design, we introduce, we sell, we produce, we make customer use our things as fast as possible, and then we get feedback again. So the same map, but just different ways of using it. So even though we start with the map, we need to start to use it and drive whatever change we want to do. So this one is another way of saying that we need to sort of sense make and understand what we do with the different sectors. So we have continuous exploration, we have the portfolio, we have the continuous integration, continuous deployment, and release on demand. And these are things that we want to be able to do faster. Not just do, we want to change the behavior and make it faster, so that it will help our whole organization to make sure that we are relevant in the future as well. So this was just a sort of a zoom out and describing how we can use a map like this to get more people to understand how this new world needs us. So if we want to be successful in this new world, we need to change behavior as an entire enterprise. It's not enough for us at solution development to do things faster. We need to get the whole feedback loop and see how this works differently. So that was a crash course in a number of cases that we have been using this for. Yeah. And the last one is also, it's not just, again, it's not about the map, it's about how we use it. So this is what we call the six-fielder. You have the vision and objectives, and then you have the current state. Like you could do heat maps or things like that. But given where you want to go and where you were at, you would get this gap that you have where the yellow and the red box is. And this gap will drive the backlog. And eventually you will decide on what changes you want to do. And then you sort of identify ongoing change, and you do that. And hopefully you will get this sort of wheel rolling between this ongoing change, improved current state, make sure that the gap is at least not as red as it was before, and then you have another go. Well, actually, the good question is, why is the innovation box empty? Well, basically, what we mean by this is that innovation can come anywhere. We haven't really found a good icon for that. So it's not just the innovation department. That's not how we want to work. We want to be able to harvest innovation ideas from a lot of areas. I think that we actually have, just the other day, found a better icon for that I can actually put in here. So that will be an improvement of this presentation. So basically use the maps for driving change or driving behavior or getting insights. There's so many different ways of making value. It would be fine how you can use the maps in a good way. And there is no right starting point. It's just whatever is a challenge for you in your organization, that could be a good starting point for sketching out your own Milky Way map. Maybe that ends it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Oh, yes. Right. So somebody asked me, where does it come from and for how long has this been going on? There was actually Dwight from TUI. Maybe you recognize this map. So this was the first one. And like you said, Milan, in the beginning, it started as a architecture tool out of a lot of frustration. So basically the gray areas in this map is the capabilities, and then you have the IT systems in the boxes. Great that you recognize it. And then you have the different integrations connecting the different boxes. And after a while, when we've been working more together, Milan, we have added the different facets, and we also sort of this enterprise design in edgy language has been growing also over the years. So we have sort of taking the basic ideas of the Milky Way and then merging that with enterprise design ideas, and sort of ended up with this new, richer, I'd say, version of the Milky Way map and way of thinking, I think.
Yeah. And this kind of concludes it for what we have to show. And I really thank everyone. I see that we didn't really lose many people, which is
That's good
great, even though we are over time, 11 minutes. So I just wanted to show you this model, which is from this book, Visualizing Business Transformation, that also features the Milky Way. And it has this model, well, about models, you could say, about visualizations, saying, you know, we have these two communities, people and change, and we have the technical community. And what we actually want to do with all the tools that we have, which is not just this book, but also the others, is to have a tool that is like in the middle, that is not as, you know, free and unconstrained and inspiring like storyboards or photos or videos or prototypes, but it's also not as constrained and engineering heavy and regulated as entity relationship, UML, or Archimate. It's like in the middle. It's a little bit bad at both, but it actually aims to connect everyone's viewpoint, those two communities, on one geography. And I hope you have seen that we actually use it in a quite like there's not one template, there's not one visualization, there's not one configuration. It's what you want to say with your map, and then how you evolve it together with the community around you that will determine what it looks like.
Yeah.
And some more books
that is
around
really
that.
important to emphasize. There are some starting points, yes, but then what works in your environment is let that be the driver of how you do it.
Yeah, so the stuff that we showed, some of it came from mapping experiences, some come from Intersection from my book, some came from the Milky Way original book by Cecilia Norden, and all of that is also implementing the enterprise design patterns, is the book that we wrote together, the two of us, with Bart and Wolfgang. You will also see that the Milky Way is one tool of many that we, or one key map that we use to connect an awful lot of other maps that you might use anyway in your organization, like the org chart, like service blueprints, like business model canvases, like process models or capability maps. So if you're interested in that, next week there's a webinar on Edgy, same time, which is the visual language. And someone also asked about tools. This is Qualiware currently implementing the Milky Way and Edgy. So there will be a EA tool support. Other than that, we want to support when we release it, hopefully around the middle of the year. Well, some EA tools, some freeform charting tools, tools like whiteboarding tools, like Mural and Miro, but also the good old PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Yes.
Did you say LeanIX? I worked a bit with LeanIX. It works, but it's not really. I haven't really been friend with it from a Milky Way perspective. but maybe I didn't put a lot of enough efforts into it.
Check again if there are any napkins.
Exactly. It's a bit too. I mean, it's really great with all the different types of information you can hold there, and I think they and Linux is really a tool that you can connect easily to other tools. So maybe can be some way of walking from Linux into something else.
Yeah, yeah. So if you have a favorite tool vendor and you want them to support it, just tell them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you're interested in all of this, please get in touch. We have a Slack community. We are developing this approach in Toolkit. We are running a conference series every year. There will be one in September in Stockholm, and we are developing, knowledge products and publications. So yeah, September 22nd, 23rd intersection at Scania actually, and then tune in next week for Edgy. The webinar about Edgy, about the language that we are using. And then I will also talk about service design, a story about a service designer at Intersection Railway at the end of the month. And here are some links, and we will send all of that out afterwards. And thank you so much for attending.
Yeah, and reach out if you have questions or thoughts, or we're eager. A bit busy though, but eager to sort of catch up and see if you find this interesting.
All right, and thank you, Anika.
Yeah, thank you. Good to talk to you again. This is a really weird way of talking to you. Take care, and well, really, thank you for listening in. But I think the easiest way is to find us through LinkedIn, Annika Kleiber, and I'm happy to connect or to chat. Good.
Yep. All right.
Now it's evening.
Have a great week.
Bye bye. Take care,
Bye.
and thanks again for tuning in.